I think you should have the evaluation done in your business annually, like you would a dental checkup twice a year, a health checkup once or twice a year. How do you know, just because your business is profitable, that the market says it's worth that value?
There were two owners in the business, and they believed the business was worth $10 million based on what another company kind of related to them was. And so their plans essentially were based on the ability of each of them to split that and each get $5 million. Well, when the value came back, it wasn't even close.
If you're on a vacation, can't even take a weekend without your phone ringing off. You have to step away. Hey, I got to take a call. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's a problem back at the office. You have a problem that is going to hurt the value of the business and going to reduce the money you walk away with when you do exit.
Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome back to the Scale to Sell podcast, the business owner's podcast to help you build transferable value, create business, personal, and financial freedom, and exit on your terms. This is episode number 53, where we're talking about the business owner wealth gap, why 80% of your net worth is trapped in your business, why that matters, and what you need to do about it is really what we're going for here today. So we start off with a question. What's your wealth gap? So this is a phrase that in the exit planning community has a very specific definition than what you might think of the wealth gap just in general society, of like differences between high income, low income earners, things like that. Now, as a certified exit planning advisor, we talk about the wealth gap as the difference between your net worth goal and your current net worth, excluding the value of your business. So a really important topic, because Steve, you know how much business owners' net worth is typically tied to the value of their business, which would be
about 80%.
Yeah. Between 70 and 90% of the most business owners' net worth is tied to the value of the business, meaning it matters how you intentionally grow and exit in order to close that wealth gap that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I've seen some, and those numbers all true. Even, well, Steve, I got $1 million in my 401k. Well, what's your income? $400,000. What do you get? What's your business valued at? We do the business valuation. It's valued at $8 or $10 million. So without the harvesting of that equity from that business, your ability to maintain that 400 grand or whatever you need in retirement, you're not going to produce 400 grand off $1 million of investments.
Yeah, it makes sense that for a lot of business owners, you've put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, but you've also put your money into it, and you've reinvested, and you've done that to grow the business at different points. And so it's not surprising, and it's not necessarily a bad thing that you've done that to grow the business, but it does mean that if you aren't intentional with how you harvest that equity and how you prepare for the next gap, how you close that gap, you could be in your big asset turns into your biggest liability.
Well, I'll just sell the business. Well, how do you know? How do you know it's transferable?
And for what?
That's correct. You thought you'd get 10 million, but that was 3 years ago, and now you've let it slide, burnout, or whatever set in, competition, AI is changing businesses. Many businesses around today will not exist in 5 years' time. So what do you do to strategically harvest and strip equity now, or when you exit in 2 to 5 years? Is that a real number? It's a real thing. And most business owners are so focused on the day-to-day, we've talked about that many times, is they don't take time to step back and worry and think and plan about an exit. They think that, hey, I want to retire in 2027. And they start thinking about it in 2027. Well, no, you should have thought about it 10 or 20 years ago, at least now. So one, you got to get a real number. Two, is that number accurate? And mitigating taxes, like we talked about on the last podcast. So I know there's a lot of offshoots right here, but that's why only about 20 to 30 businesses ever successfully sell. Successful means not that you can't sell it, but maybe it's not a successful sale because you don't harvest what you need out of the business to cover that wealth gap.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just to give you an illustration of what we're talking about here to hopefully reinforce that before we get into some steps that you should take to close that wealth gap and make sure that you've done the financial and personal planning that you need in order to have a successful growth and exit time of your life. So again, if your net worth goal is $20 million and your net worth excluding the value of the business is say 4.5 million, okay, well then your wealth gap is fairly substantial, right? 15.5 million that you've got there. And so again, what you do to grow the business, to be best in class and to get that best in class multiple is going to matter if you're going to be able to close that gap and harvest it correctly. So 3 steps that we're going to talk about today to close the wealth gap. The first one, know your value. If I had $1 for every time that we had to say this, but it's necessary to say, we'd be good to go, right? Most owners guess their value based on revenue alone or gut feelings, but they haven't gotten a real valuation of what the market thinks their business is worth.
Or I think. I always hear the I think. Well, I read an article or I heard somebody, I had somebody in the same business that told their business, that just because they may be true, may not be true, but even if it was, I think you should have the evaluation done in your business annually, like you would a dental checkup twice a year, a health checkup once or twice a year. How do you know just because your business is profitable that the market says it's worth that value?
Yeah.
And if you're counting on that equity from that business to exit and successfully exit, meaning you don't want your lifestyle to be reduced in retirement, first know the value. We talk about grow the value and then protect the value. So yes, at least start with, let's get a true and accurate assessment. And we have a software program. We have M&A experts, but we have a software program. We do that free of charge for people, and we need some basic information to do that. So that's powerful for you because you need to know the value. So whether it's us or somebody else, it should be done at least on an annual basis.
Absolutely. First of all, scaletosell.com/value, scaletosell.com/value. You can check that out. We'd love to be able to help you get that valuation, get clarity on where you're currently at, where you're going in terms of the direction, and then how do you move forward from there. But I think about how many times, like we think about individual businesses changing and the value fluctuating there, but markets change, multiples change of what people are willing to pay in different markets based on what's going on at that time. And so to think that just because you heard it one way or you heard about this other company, I just did, at this point, a couple months ago now, became a certified exit planning advisor, a CEPA. And during the certification process, we went through, I don't know how many studies of different businesses and looking at how ready they were, how attractive the business was, and the number of times that business owners think they have an idea of the business. I remember one of the examples that we to look at. There were 2 owners in the business, and they believed the business was worth $10 million based on what another company kind of related to them was. And so their plans essentially were based on the ability of each of them to split that and each get $5 million. Well, when the value came back, it wasn't even close to what they thought because there were so many limitations. They had poor customer concentration. Like it was bad in that way. They had an aging management team with little transition plans in place. It was not set up to be a solid transferable business at that point. And so they weren't able to get the money that they needed. But again, they're thinking about it based on, well, this is what I see in the market. And this is what, without making it personal to them. And it completely ruin their plans.
In our valuation that we give you, it shows your current value, it shows your strengths, it shows your weaknesses, and it shows your dream value, the future value, the value you need to harvest in order to, have your best life. So it's a really good and thorough assessment of where you're at and what you need to do over the next 12 months, 24, 36, 48, whenever it is you're going to exit. So that's very valuable, but that's a shocker. And you could put your head in the sand.
Yep.
And say it's going to be okay because it's worth 10 million. But there's many cases, about 70% of the time, you're going to end up getting less than what you think it's worth.
I was on a call recently with a bunch of exit planners, and the organizations that we work with and are connected to do a lot of studies of business owners through surveys and other types of research in order to get a picture of where people are at in the market, how prepared they are for exit and things like that. And the stat that was shared by, it was a combination of M&A professionals and financial advisors, said that the number was 10%. That's the amount of business owners who sold their business and got what they thought the business was worth.
I hadn't heard that stat. That's a new one on me.
That was shocking to me, in the sense of like you would think it'd be somewhat higher than, but again, it goes back to seller expectations. If you don't know and you're just guessing, it's not based on proof, it's not based on evidence, it's hard to say what you're going to get.
Say, quote, your baby is always the prettiest, right?
Yeah.
So you think your baby
Ugly
is worth,
baby
it's
syndrome.
worth something to you. It's worth something to somebody else. Well, Steve, I'm making hundreds of thousands, $500,000. Somebody will gladly pay for that. From some of the things that Adam just mentioned, you got too few of clients, and if you lose one of those clients, there goes 25, 50% of your sales, or as you mentioned, you lose a couple key employees, or you don't have processes documented.
So much of it relies on you.
And that if you're not there and there's two and you're the central hub of everything, there goes the value of the business.
That is one of the key areas that like mindset shift has to take place, and the need to get clarity on an ongoing basis. Like you want to know sooner rather than later where you're at, because it gives you time to grow, and which takes us to step number 2, grow your transferable value. If you're not looking to sell right away, this is a great opportunity to take that assessment, to take that view of what your business is worth at this point, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses, and build from it. We talked about it, and you were just referencing it there, the idea of building systems, putting processes in place so that you have something that works without you being there. If the company is dependent on you, the company is not transferable. It is not worth what you're going to need it to be to close that wealth gap, and that's a big thing. Developing leaders. One of the issues in that case that I was citing was the management team. They were great. They had been there for in between 20 and 30 years, almost all of them, but they had done little to be able to prepare the next generation. And so if any of them, or even just one or two of them, start to retire because they've been there a long time, they're ready to move on to their next chapter of their life, the company's in big trouble because all of that intellectual capital is in their brains and not in a place that can be used to continue the operations of the business. Again, strengthen your intangible capital. We've talked about those. And we're going to keep talking about those because it's central to the value of your business to get what you can out of it, to maximize the value of your business and to be able to close that wealth gap. Your intangible capitals are so valuable.
Some of you have a financial advisor. This is like having an advisor, at least occasionally, all right?
A value advisor.
At least once a year on your business. So if it's your largest asset, it's good to have a second opinion come in and show you things. And then you make decisions to do stuff or not do stuff. But yeah, these are things that are tried and true and proven to grow not only profits, but to grow value, which is really what you're looking for if you're thinking about an exit at some point in the future.
I wrote down this thought before we go to the next point about this, because sometimes business owners are like, I'm too busy, I don't have the time, whatever. Like, and just to shift the perspective here, right? Every hour you spend systematizing increases future wealth, not just your current income. And as you're thinking towards the future and what it's going to take to close that wealth gap and build a transferable company that the market is willing to pay top dollar for, you're going to need those things in place if it's going to be a successful transition.
And it's a check engine light. If you don't have time to take away from your business to work on these things, it's a check engine light that your business is not transferable, because if everything relies on you, that's a warning sign, and it's not as valuable. So again, you take you out of the mix. Buyers they know you're not going to be there after 6 months or something, even after the transition, because they're going to keep you on for a little bit. But that's a check engine light, a warning sign that you've got problems in your business.
Okay, bear with me. I have young kids, so this just reminds me of Madagascar, and the penguins are in the plane, and the lights going off, and instead of solving the problem, yes, he smashes the light bulb with a book and is like, problemo solved. Yeah, that's not how we solve problems
I love
here.
That. Head in the sand, but you're ignoring. So even if you've got a profitable business and you're doing well, if you can't take time off, if you're on your vacation, we've talked about this before, if you're on a vacation, can't even take a weekend without your phone ringing off, you have to step away. Hey, I got to take a call. I got to do this. I got to do that. There's a problem back at the office. You have a problem that is not It's going to hurt the value of the business, and it's going to reduce the money you walk away with when you do exit.
Not to mention your current lifestyle and freedom that you're trying to enjoy now, but clearly can't. So again, step number 1, know your value. You've got to have that kind of clarity. Step number 2, grow the transferable value. And step number 3, plan your exit early. This is one of the most common misconceptions when it comes to the idea or the concept of exit planning. Exit planning isn't about selling tomorrow. It's about scaling with the end in mind. It's about being ready and having the available options to choose from because you've set yourself up for success with the choices that you've made today.
You always want to be ready to exit. I don't care if you're 2 years into the business or 40 years into the business. What if I exited today? If I had to walk, if somebody offered me a truckload of money, is it enough for me to walk away with? If not, what do I got to do to get it there? Right? And paring down debt, minimizing taxes, making sure I've got enough income and can harvest that equity to walk. So you always want to be thinking about this at least once a year. Take some time once a year, because if you don't take the time, it'll be another year, and another year. And sometimes it gets harder and harder to fix the problem the closer we get to that exit. And then burnout, as we talked about, sometimes burnout sets in. I got to go. And then things are sliding down. Well, I can't go yet because I can't harvest them. And then more burnout sets in. And now the business is worth nothing, right? Or 10% of what you only successfully exit 10% of the time.
Yeah.
Terrible
Get what
number.
you expected out of the deal. The earlier that you plan and that you start preparing, almost always, right, the more options you're going to have going forward. We talk about, the different exit options and the different hybrid options of different things kind of coming together to create what works best for you. The earlier you start thinking about those things, this is why as a STIPO, we talk about it. You make that choice every 90 days as a part of the growth and exit process of, am I going to keep scaling or am I going to transition to that selling kind of mind frame? But you're coming back to it from a standpoint of, am I ready? Is the business ready? And is it attractive to outside buyers, which is so valuable. One last analogy, and then we'll wrap it up here. We often talk about the 3 legs of the stool here, that every successful exit has to compensate, has to plan and prepare for the business, the personal, and the financial. And the wealth gap is one of the things that we talk about that kind of combines all 3 of those legs when you think about it from a conceptual standpoint, because you're looking at what you want to do personally and what type of money that's going to take to do it, where you're currently at in your financial needs. And it's also bringing together what is your business worth and how are you going to harvest it. And so it's powerful to think about, but the key is to not let the wealth that you've created stay trapped in the business, locked away where you can't access it, or you haven't built a business that's transferable so you can't enjoy the proceeds from it. You've worked too hard for that. You've put too much into it to not be able to walk away from that. So again, going back to step number 1, get that estimate of value, get that clarity on what your business is worth, scaletosell.com/value for sure, if you haven't done so. Final thoughts before I wrap it up?
It's just too important. The stats are just mind numbing that trillions of dollars in equity, business equities, could be lost because people don't properly plan. It's an opportunity for business owners coming in to buy things for pennies on the dollar and come in like a scavenger and scoop it up and produce big assets, but that means you've lost out. So you want to protect it by planning. Planning is the key to this, to grow your income, grow the value. And it just, even if you decide to hold on to the business, you know you're on track. You can harvest, and it's always a different mindset if you can walk away on any given day. So a client beefing at your employee not showing up, if you go, I could sell this sucker today and cash out and walk away. You may not, but it gives you some peace of mind, gives your family peace of mind too, that if something happens to you and you have to exit, or something happens, you're not here anymore. Right. And so, but it's too important. I encourage you to take it forward. It's been around for a long time. But the stats say not enough business owners are doing these strategies, but more and more people with people like us and other exit planners are really bringing the message to those millions of baby boomer and Generation X business owners that need to harvest at some point in time this equity from their business to move on.
Absolutely. If you're in a place where you're thinking, am I ready for growth or exit? I'd encourage you to go to scaletosell.com/assessment. We put together, it's a simple 10-question little quiz to talk through kind of the 3 steps, the 3 parts of a successful exit: the business, the personal, the financial, and gives you the chance and also the link there to be able to get that opinion of value, to get that idea on the clarity of the value of your business as it currently stands, as well as what you were talking about, the future needs and opportunities there. So again, scaletosell.com/assessment, or click the link in the show notes below. You can download that PDF and walk through that quiz, and it'll be a good little eye opener for you and give you the chance to get some clarity on where you're at and where you need to go based on your individual goals. Until next time, keep scaling.